Hello, and thank you for joining me for another tutorial. This week we're going to be doing a drawing tutorial on one of my favorite characters from one of my favorite anime. We're going to be doing All Might from My Hero Academia. So, like last time, you'll see that I have my little reference piece over here that I'm going to be copying from. Again, this is good to get yourself familiarized with a character who you're not familiar drawing, finding like the dynamic poses or the types of things you'd like to draw of that character, and then kind of emulating that over and over again until you're comfortable drawing the character without looking at a piece of reference art. Most artists use reference art when they're drawing things, whether it's a picture of a character that they're trying to emulate, or whether it's like pictures they took of people that they're going to be using poses for. Most artists do use reference art for things, so this is a common practice. Okay, so if we take a look at what All Might looks like, really what we can do is we can break this down into a couple of different shapes, right? We can take a look at his pose here, and there's really a few shapes that we can break down his entire form into. Now, if you can see where my cursor is showing up, it's going to show up a little small here, or I'm going to use the mouse pointer here. His arm, the top part where his shoulder is just really one big circle, right? We have one big circle. And then for his tricep over here, that's the back muscle on his arm, we have just a little curve. And then a little curve toward the bottom of the page, kind of telling us where his elbow is. Let's get that started with my program here. So, again, you guys are going to be working on paper, I'm assuming, unless you're also working with a touch input device. Really anything I do here also still applies if you're doing it on pencil. So, let me start off by getting the rough shape here for All Might. Select my pencil, and let's get started here. So, again, if I'm looking at that arm, I have kind of the curve for the elbow here at the bottom. And then we have the bigger curve for where the tricep is. And then right at top here, we have just a big ol', like, where his shoulder is. Now we're gonna have kind of an indent there in the middle where, like, you know, his neck and back shoulder kind of meet, and then we have a nice big circle again for the front of his shoulder, and that kind of goes down until we're about a third down the page, and then we're gonna get his forearm and then the hand. Now the hand, I'm gonna rough out the shape. Now you'll notice the hand is very big. Also in the original picture, the hand is very big, so the arm. This is something in drawing we call foreshortening. That's when you want something on the page to seem like it's closer than the rest of the thing on the page. Obviously, it's a two-dimensional object. Like if I'm using my camera here, I can just move my hand closer. With a two-dimensional object that you're drawing, obviously they're all flat on the same plane. To give the impression that something is closer, draw it bigger. That's what foreshortening is. So if I want to have someone's hand look bigger, is I just draw it, you know, or have the hand look closer and draw it bigger than, like, say, the face. Even though the hand is normally smaller than the face, I can bring it up here, and like if I draw it where it's bigger than the face, it gives the impression that it's closer than the face is. That's what they're doing here with this drawing. Is we have All Might with the hand looking really big to make it look like it's closer. Alright, so now that we have the arm kind of basically roughed out, we're going to go ahead and put that neck muscle, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do kind of, like I said, the circular shape for the front. Now that circular shape for the front kind of goes past the hand. And right now I'm just kind of roughing out the shape. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to add my details in as we go. And then, of course, we get to the part where we're going to have to put the head. So now, again, I'm going to put basic shape for the head. Now, he's got a square jaw. So we're going to make sure we have that very defined jaw. I'm going to round out the head here. And so we have the basic shape here, the basic idea of the layout of this drawing. I have the thumbs up, I have the arm, I have the head, and I have the rest of the body here. Now, some of these proportions might not be quite right. I might have to fix some of them as I go, but that's fine. That's why we're working in pencil. And that's why, you know, nothing's ever really completely done. You can always kind of fix up as you go. Okay. So now I have to start putting in some of the fine details. So we're going to make sure that we have this actually starting to look like All Might. See, because right now, this kind of pose, this is a very generic superhero pose. I can make this any superhero character I wanted to. I can make this Captain America if I want to. I can make this, you know, into really any sort of muscle-bound hero that you normally have, because it's just generic, muscle guy giving the thumbs up pose. In order to start making it look like All Might, I have to add in the things that are All Might. Part of that is the costume. I'm going to have to make sure I get the design of the costume, you know, proper here. Part of that is also the details for the face and for kind of how the rest of the body is drawn. So as you can see, I'm going through, I'm correcting just some of the stuff that I don't think looks quite right. Okay, so I have the big thick neck muscle back here. I have the arm, the shoulder, the back part of the shoulder to the front part of the shoulder. Erase that a little bit because the front part of the shoulder kind of overlaps that way. All right, so there's also, you don't see it because it's shadowed a little bit over here, but he has like a little kind of dent in where his pec muscles are. So we're gonna draw that in a little bit. That's really not gonna be so visible, but I want it there just for reference. I can delete it later, and I start putting in some of the details from his costume. So those red and white stripes. Red, white, red. Okay, and then there's going to be part over here. This is his thumb. It's going to be over here. And we have a continue over to the rest of his costume. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and get the sleeve part of his costume here as well. Again, part of what defines what he looks like is the kind of design and color scheme of his costume. So coloring can also do a lot to make the character look more like the character you're trying to draw. So again, I suggest colored pencils more than anything else. Markers give a very flat look. With colored pencils, you can wind up doing things like shading and things like that. Now we're going to have this continue over the arm here. We have his red, white, and blue stripes. Well, his red and white stripes with the blue background for his costume. Again, it'll be either red, white, and red. It's a little hard sometimes to see when it's in black and white, exactly what's going to be what. And you can see I didn't keep the spacing right here. I made my stripes too low down, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and erase those stripes. We talked about that last time with the Dipper Pines drawing, how one of the things we want to do is make sure that we have the spacing of things proper. It doesn't have to be exact. We're not breaking out a ruler and getting the exact millimeter or inch count, but what we're doing is making sure that, oh, this top part is closer to this other thing than it is to the bottom part, where we're seeing things in relation to each other, or the proportions of things are correct. That's the thing more than anything that's going to make your drawing look better or look worse, is if your proportions are what is expected. Okay, so better. Stripe is higher up here. We're going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'm going to move this up. And again, this is why we work in pencil. This is why I always say it's not going to be perfect. Not by a long shot. Okay, better. I'm a little happier with that. And then we're going to put the little red stripe by the collar here. Make sure we have that little detail. Also want to make sure we have the end of the yellow by its forearm here. So that when I color this in, I'll have all the lines already in. And now we get to the face. And we want to make sure we're getting the details right on the face. This is more than anything what makes All Might look like All Might, or really what makes any character look like that character. Because even still, like looking like this, this could be any superhero, right? It's not until I get the All Might face on there that it's going to look like the character that I'm drawing. So what I normally do, again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put my little crosshairs on here. Now, I'm not going to put the line that low down. All Might's eyes actually sit pretty high in his head. Is one of the things that are distinctive about his look. They're distinctive about his look. So now all I have to do is kind of get the important parts of what make this character this character. Now with All Might, we have the square jaw, the very traditional Western comic book looking square jaw, which that's one of the things I find interesting about My Hero Academia. It's a Japanese, manga and anime, which is very much their storytelling is very much in the anime and manga style, but their art styles take a lot from Western designs because they're doing superheroes, because they're trying to make something that's similar to what's a Marvel or DC comic. Like All Might is basically Superman, more or less in his design and in his demeanor. And so I always find it interesting that they're mixing kind of the styles of like Western and Eastern art here. I always find it interesting that they're kind of mixing Western and Eastern styles here. It's one of the things I really enjoy about the show. Alright, so I don't want the turn of his jaw to be too round. I want it to be nice and squared off. I'm going to square off the chin down here. I'm going to make sure that we also have that hard profile on the right side there. Notice how his profile is very distinct and very rigid. So we're going to make sure we have that profile, because if I have that profile, it's going to look a lot more like him than if I don't get that exactly right. The profiles are very important in comic book and cartoon characters. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and start filling in some of the finer details. We're going to go ahead and put the eyebrows. He's got that little wing at the end here with the eyebrow where it kind of dips down, but we still have a very kind of squared off, very thick browed look here. So actually I'm going to make his eyebrows a little thicker than that because they are very thick. Again, one of the defining features of the character. We of course want to make sure the other side is in proportion to it and it is in the same spot. That we have some symmetry here. And then the interesting thing about All Might versus a lot of other anime characters is that he doesn't have very distinct eyes. His eyes are distinct because they're not really there. They do this thing where they shadow out his eyes to make his forehead and brow look like it's bigger, I think. makes it look like his brow is jutting out and shading his eyes. It gives him a very distinct look. It's really a lot. You don't get a lot of other characters who look like All Might. I think it's one of the reasons why he always stands out so much. Kind of like in relation to other characters. The other thing with All Might is that they always draw him with a lot of shadow on his face. No matter where the light's coming from, they always shadow out parts of his face. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to draw the outline of the shadows here, because when we're doing this eye on this side, really everything gets lost in the shadow on that side. It's one of the ways they make him look a bit more dynamic, a bit more heroic, a bit more mysterious even. And that's how we actually get the shape of like his chin too, is from the shadow. Not so much from what we see, but it's from what we don't see. Same thing with his nose. Let me get rid of that extra line here. So we get the shape and the outline of the shadow, which gives us a lot of what the shape of his face is going to be. Really, the shape of his chin and the shape of his nose comes straight from the shadows. It doesn't really come from anything else. The only thing that we see very clearly on his face is that giant smile, which again, we're talking important things on the character, right? Things that make the character look like the character. You got to get that smile looking exactly right. We'll put in those shadows by where the eye should be and by that side of his face. Gonna shade that all in just so I can get that shape. And then, of course, we have to make sure we get that hair in there. That's always a big thing with All Might, is we want to make sure that he has a very distinct hairstyle. So we're going to get that ear right where the jawline here kind of meets the neck. We're going to make sure we get the ear in the proper shape. Things like ear shapes can also be important for making sure that we have the shape of the head right. See, right now that's going way too high. I'm not paying attention to where it is in relation to the rest of his face. So the top of his ear, you can see here, should be by the top of his eyebrow. So we're going to go across. I'm going to start the ear at the top. Alright, and then we got to make sure we get the hairline right. I'm going to bring it up. Now his hairline is like he's got slicked back hair. And so the front is a little easy because it just really kind of rounds out the top and gives it a little bit of those jagged edges where his hair sticks out a little bit. So we have that up here. And then we have, it comes into the peak over his brow. No, it doesn't come into peak over his brow. It goes here, and then we swoop it down over his brow. So over here is kind of like the rounded part. Now, one of the most distinctive parts of his hair I can't quite do because we cut off at the top here. Now, if I had more room at the top, I would have like those two big parts that go out of his hair that stick up almost like an antenna. But in order to make this look as much like All Might as possible, the big thing is kind of the length of his hair. He's got that really long hair that swoops down in the back. So I'm going to do a couple of those swoops in the back. And we're going to go ahead and we got, again, a very distinct shape in the back. It rounds out and kind of sticks out a little bit there. And see how that kind of completes the All Might look. You know, before it could have been kind of like a generic superhero. With these little details, especially with the way the hair kind of sits on the head, we have it looking as much like All Might as we can. And then as you see fit, you go through the picture and you just add in a little shading. Now, a big thing with All Might again is, yeah, they want to make him look dramatic, like, you know, Western comic book hero. So they add lots of shadows and shading. Studying the way they draw the characters in My Hero Academia is actually not a bad way to see like how shadow and shading is used in comic book art style to create more drama and to see how they use it to shape the way the faces look. So this is just your basic sketch for All Might. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Now, of course, obviously, I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to do my little details, and I'm going to do my finishing, which is where I'm going to outline everything and color everything. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward that. So, you know, if you guys have any suggestions or if there's anything you'd like to see me do the next time I do this, just, you know, leave a comment below. Let me know, and I'll see if I can do a character you guys want me to do the next time I do one of these. Thank you guys, and I look forward to doing another one again with you guys next week.